Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we step into a truth that has the power to reshape your life from the inside out. Everything you experience, your relationships, your finances, your struggles, and your victories is not dictated by the outer world, but by the energy and assumptions you carry within. From the depths of the collective unconscious to the laws of imagination, we will uncover how your state of being is the real creator of your destiny. If you have ever felt stuck, divided, or limited by appearances, this message will set you free. Unattached energy fuels transformation. When your energy is no longer bound by the constant pull of external demands, it begins to move differently. It is no longer scattered, no longer drained by the invisible threads of obligation, compromise, and emotional negotiation. It becomes concentrated, focused, and available for the work of inner change. In this state, what was once spent on maintaining relationships or managing others' expectations is redirected inward, feeding the processes of growth that require both attention and strength. To understand this, imagine the way water behaves. When it flows freely down a river, it spreads out, touching everything along its path. But when it is contained, directed, and channeled, it gains force, enough to carve stone, power turbines, and reshape landscapes. Human energy works in much the same way. When it is constantly given away in fragments, to the demands of a partner, the weight of social obligations, the quiet but persistent pressure to meet someone else's needs, it loses the intensity required for deep transformation. But when it is held within, not in selfish hoarding, but in mindful preservation, it gains the power to reshape the self from the inside out. Unattached energy does not mean emotional coldness. It means reclaiming the parts of yourself that you have unconsciously handed over to others. It is the choice to step back from the constant reflex to give, to please, to manage, or to fix, and instead to sit with your own inner landscape. In doing this, you begin to see the areas of your life that have long been neglected, not because they were unimportant, but because your energy was too divided to address them. When your energy is unattached, it naturally turns toward creation. You find yourself drawn to pursuits that have been postponed for years, projects you once dismissed as impossible, dreams you left to gather dust because you believed you lacked the time, the focus, or the emotional space. Without the silent drain of constant external demands, you discover that you are capable of far more than you imagined. This is not a sudden burst of willpower, but a steady, sustainable current that pushes you forward day by day. Transformation requires more than desire. It requires resources. Energy is one of the most essential resources you have. When it is tied up in unresolved conflicts, in the endless loops of trying to be enough for someone else, in the constant adjustments to fit into another person's rhythm, there is little left for you. But when those attachments loosen, when you allow yourself to be whole without being tethered, you find that energy begins to return to you. It comes back like a tide, slow at first, then stronger, until it becomes a force you can work with consciously. In this state, you begin to see possibilities where before you only saw limits. You start to experiment with change, altering routines, exploring new ways of thinking, engaging in practices that nourish rather than deplete you. Small shifts build on each other, and because your energy is no longer being siphoned away, these shifts take root. They become habits, then foundations, and eventually they transform the way you live entirely. Unattached energy also sharpens awareness. Without the emotional static of constantly managing relationships, you can hear the subtler signals of your own intuition. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer clouded by the fear of how someone else will react. You begin to act from alignment rather than appeasement. This clarity allows you to move more decisively, to commit to paths that once seemed uncertain, and to release those that no longer serve you. There is also a deep sense of sovereignty in holding your energy this way. You are no longer defined by how much you give to others, but by how consciously you choose where to place your attention and effort. This is not isolation, it is intentionality. The collective unconscious is not something that is built in the course of a single lifetime, nor is it a structure that arises from personal experiences alone. It is deeper, more ancient, and more universal than the personal unconscious that carries our forgotten memories and suppressed desires. The collective unconscious is the hidden layer of the human psyche that belongs not to the individual, but to humanity as a whole. It is the psychic inheritance passed down through generations, the patterns that guide thought, imagination, and instinct long before we learn to think in words or concepts. It is what binds one human being to another, regardless of culture, language, or age, because it is older than all civilization. This realm within us is filled with images and forces that are not created by personal experience. They are archetypal, meaning they are fundamental and timeless patterns of human existence. Every culture, from the dawn of history until today, has produced myths, legends, and symbols that reflect these same patterns. A young child who dreams of a monster in the dark is living out the same drama that ancient tribes once told in stories of demons, dragons, and spirits. The image is not taught, yet it emerges because it belongs to the universal language of the psyche. Such patterns appear spontaneously in dreams, fantasies, works of art, and even in religious visions, showing that the human mind is never isolated. It is rooted in something deeper that transcends individuality. The collective unconscious can be thought of as the storehouse of humanity's most essential psychological truths. It carries the knowledge of life and death, of growth and decay, of creation and destruction. When a society creates myths of gods and goddesses, when a poet writes of eternal love, when an artist paints a mother cradling her child, all of these are expressions of archetypes that rise out of the collective unconscious. They are not copies from each other, but independent manifestations of the same underlying form. A myth from ancient Greece, a legend from India, and a story from a remote African tribe may all describe a hero setting out on a journey, guided by a wise figure, confronted by darkness, and transformed through struggle. These are not accidents of storytelling, but reflections of universal structures rooted in the psyche itself. The existence of this collective dimension explains why human beings so often feel a mysterious familiarity with symbols or stories they have never personally encountered. One may hear a myth from a distant culture and immediately sense its meaning. A dream image may feel ancient, as if it belonged not just to the dreamer, but to countless others before. The resonance is strong because these images live not on the surface of consciousness, but in the deep strata that belong to all. The archetypes that inhabit the collective unconscious are not abstract ideas, but living forces. They shape how we perceive ourselves and the world. The figure of the shadow, for example, represents all that we repress and refuse to acknowledge, and it will appear in dreams or behaviors, no matter how hard one tries to escape it. The figure of the hero embodies the instinct to face challenges and seek transformation, and it will arise in myths, stories, and personal struggles alike. The Great Mother symbolizes both nurture and destruction, expressing the dual nature of life-giving and life-taking power. These figures do not need to be taught. They are there from the beginning, waiting to find form in our lives. What makes the collective unconscious so profound is that it reveals the individual as part of something greater than themselves. While each person has their unique memories, upbringing, and struggles, beneath that lies a foundation shared with every other human being. We are shaped by the same ancient forces, the same timeless dramas, and the same fundamental truths of existence. This is why human beings across the world can understand each other's stories and symbols at a level deeper than language. They speak to something in us that is already known, something inherited, something eternal. The collective unconscious is not merely a theory of psychology, but a vision of what it means to be human. It reminds us that we are not isolated egos moving through life with only our own memories to guide us. We are bearers of an ancient inheritance, connected to one another through invisible threads of shared images and instincts. It is a realm where the past of humanity lives on in the present, shaping the patterns of thought, emotion, and imagination that will carry forward into the future. Every man and woman here is surrounded by a world that seems solid, independent, and unchangeable. Yet beneath its appearance lies a profound truth. The outer world is not the master, but the servant. It reflects, like a flawless mirror, the convictions you carry within. Tonight, I invite you to see beyond appearances, to recognize that your assumptions, your faith, and your inner certainties are silently shaping every detail of your life. Money is a reflection of your inner state, a mirror that reveals the quality of your beliefs, assumptions, and feelings. It does not exist independently of your consciousness, for it is consciousness that gives rise to all appearances. Many people think money is separate, something that must be chased or acquired through force and struggle, but the truth is that it is always responding to the image you hold of yourself and the state you consistently inhabit. If you see yourself as lacking, if you dwell in fear of not having enough, money will reflect that by staying distant or scarce. If you see yourself as abundant, secure, and provided for, then money flows naturally, often in ways you cannot predict or control. This is why two people can be in the same environment, working the same job, surrounded by the same circumstances, and yet one thrives financially while the other struggles. It is not the external situation that makes the difference, but the inner conviction each carries. Money does not care about hours or effort. It bends to the certainty of the one who assumes abundance. When you believe yourself to be prosperous, when you feel within that wealth is natural and effortless, life mirrors that belief in visible form. Think of money not as a thing to acquire, but as a state of consciousness. If you walk in the state of wealth, the outer world must show it. If you walk in the state of lack, the outer world must also reveal that. The outer is powerless. It only echoes the inner. Just as a mirror reflects your face, money reflects the picture you have accepted of yourself. If the reflection is poor, you do not try to polish the mirror, you change the face you present to it. In the same way, if money seems absent, you do not fight the external situation, you turn inward and reshape the state from which you live. The error most people make is believing that money itself will change their state. They wait for more to arrive before they feel secure, free, or generous. But the law is reversed. First you feel secure, free, and generous within. Then the money comes as an effect. Cause is always inner, effect is always outer. To look to the outer world for proof before adjusting the inner is to live in delay, frustration, and endless striving. The moment you decide that abundance is yours and you feel that decision as real, money begins to reflect that change. It may come through unexpected channels, a promotion, a gift, a new idea, an opportunity you had overlooked, but its arrival is inevitable, for the state you occupy must take shape. The important thing is not to obsess over the channels, not to wonder how or when, but to remain faithful to the inner conviction that wealth is already yours. The reflection cannot resist the image. Hold poverty within, and poverty reflects itself outward. Hold abundance within, and abundance mirrors back. It is law, unchanging and precise. If you truly wish to change your financial world, do not begin by working harder or worrying more. Begin by assuming the inner state of one who is already wealthy. Walk as that person, speak as that person, sleep as that person. Let your imagination furnish the scenes that wealth would bring, and then rest in the satisfaction of them. In time, the world of facts will reshape to align with the inner truth you have accepted. Money will appear, not because you forced it, but because you recognized it as a natural outpicturing of your state. When you live in abundance within, you cannot escape it without. When you dwell in lack within, you cannot escape it without. Money, always and only, is the echo of what you are conscious of being. It is never separate, never independent, never outside of you. It is your own reflection. To live in the end is to step beyond the world of appearances and plant yourself firmly in the reality of what you desire as though it were already true. It is to cease asking, wishing, and waiting, and instead to inhabit the feeling that the goal has been accomplished. The outer world may not yet show it, the evidence may seem lacking, but to live in the end is to refuse the testimony of the senses and to remain loyal only to the inner conviction. When you walk in the assumption of the fulfilled desire, you align yourself with the creative power that brings all things into being, for creation begins not in action, but in imagination. To live in the end means you stop treating your wish as a future event and begin treating it as a present fact. If you long for wealth, you do not imagine it someday arriving. You imagine yourself already enjoying it, feeling the security, the freedom, the ease that comes with it. If you desire love, you do not see it far off. You rest in the feeling of being already cherished, already chosen, already embraced. To live in the end is not to postpone your dream, but to assume it is now, to occupy it with such intensity of feeling that the outer world has no choice but to conform. Most people make the mistake of looking to circumstances for permission to believe. They say, when the evidence shows up, then I will feel it real. But the law of life works the opposite way. First you feel it real, then the evidence arrives. Waiting for proof before assuming the end is like waiting for a harvest before planting the seed. The seed must first be sown in imagination, watered with feeling, and held in conviction. Only then does it take root and push through into visibility. Living in the end is not pretending, nor is it daydreaming. It is a deliberate act of faith, a conscious decision to accept the unseen as real. It is not the same as wishing, which only emphasizes absence. Wishing says, I want this, but I don't have it. Living in the end says, it is mine, it is done, and I feel the joy of it now. That subtle shift changes everything, for your consciousness creates the pattern to which the world must respond. To live in the end is to ask yourself, what would it be like if it were already true, and then to walk in that answer. If you were already successful, how would you carry yourself? How would you speak to others? What would your days look like? Begin to embody that now, not by forcing outer change, but by inwardly assuming the state. The tone of your inner conversations changes, your reactions shift, your energy radiates differently, and the world, being nothing more than a mirror, reflects it faithfully. The world outside is nothing more than a mirror reflecting who you believe yourself to be. When you gather your energy, when you claim your inner sovereignty, when you dare to live in the end, transformation is not a dream, it becomes your reality. Do not wait for proof, do not wait for permission. Assume it now, feel it now, live it now, and watch the outer world bow to the conviction of your inner truth.